Um, Story of historic progress, a story that doesn't exist without you. Our unifying effort of action demonstrates our commitment and endurance. And our progress thus far shows that a polio-free world is achievable. Individuals, clubs, partners, and governments share a collective vision to improve the health of every single child. Polio in some of the most difficult places, overcoming obstacles and navigating complex issues. Our successes prove that polio will be eradicated, and while ending a global disease is not easy, as Rotary, we don't give up. We'll continue to fight until each child is protected. This isn't possible without you. So stay involved, keep pushing forward, engage with close communities, start a social media conversation, and increase visibility on the importance of this global effort. Hold events and fundraisers on World Polio Day and throughout the year. Advocate to governments about the importance of supporting polio eradication. Make a contribution and invest in one of the largest health the solution to our challenge. It's because of each and every one of you that we will improve our future by making polio a disease of the past. Eradication is possible, so let's keep our promise.
Thank you for waiting. Let us start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Remain standing. We've had a change in the weather. It occurs to me, I don't know what our situation is in Ames, Iowa, but throughout our country and actually worldwide, those that don't have the protection of a home, the homeless, those in need of shelter. Let's keep those in mind. And as top of mind, I'm constantly reminded of what's going on in Ukraine. So let's not forget those fine people as well. So I'll take just a moment for that, if you will. And family, friends, those you hold near and dear to yourself. And we be seated. We have a guest to recognize today, and Lisa, you brought this guest, and I'm not sure what you. We can make the introduction, please. Oh, just a minute, Lily, I'll get you a microphone. Thank you, Lily.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. So today I brought my husband, John Nagley, to Rotary today. Hopefully we'll look at having him join at some point, but thought I could introduce him to what all is involved here.
Thank you, John. You'll find on each of your tables a brief survey geared towards the startup of the evening session that we have got going forward. And so we would like you to take the opportunity to take this with you, review it, complete as much as you can, and you can bring it back next week. We will also have the opportunity to complete this for next week as well. So we're just trying to get a firm grip and firm start for the evening club. Due to my lack of ability and capability, we have not been able to get that moving the way I was hoping. So we'll really start to gear that towards January. We'll get through the holiday season now and start that up. So that's an opportunity to bring in new members, new membership, and if you find noon times difficult, perhaps that might be of interest to you. So if you draw note to that. Also, as we speak about surveys, we have surveys going out. It's a random survey. So we're sending it out over to the 160 membership and select groups, and it's a random, so not everybody might get it. But if you do, it's significantly important that you respond to it. Whether it's part of our strategic planning, it has to do with our facilities, it has to do with your meeting. So we would invite you and encourage you, if you should receive that survey, to please complete it and return it as soon as possible. That'll be out in the next, if you haven't done it already, Mine have yet to get out, but it'll be in the next week or so that you'll have those in response. So I thank you for that. Typically, at this time, I take a few moments to introduce a special time. Oh, you know what? I just got the high sign that I have left our guests and yourselves anxiously awaiting. My apologies. So, still waiting for the leadership to come up with a few volunteers, either singers or keyboardists, so we can have one in the committee, because right now John's away, and so I'm a band. So having that, I would tell you Jim hopefully on the sunshine. I do apologize again. Sometimes we just want to test ourselves and change the order of business a little bit. And that was a big mistake on my part. So now we have the grant recipients will be our meeting. So those that have received the grants will be sharing with us a little bit about what they have been able to accomplish in the community. So I look forward to that. And that again will be a live session. So you're invited back here on October 31st for that opportunity. From time to time, I tell you what this day is all about, what happened in history. But today is a very important day for Rotary, because today is National Polio Day. And with that, I have the opportunity to have John share a few words with us about this opportunity we each have in eradicating this disease. Okay. Frank mentioned that today is World Polio Day. And if you recall, last year at this time, we talked a little bit about the history of polio and some of the resources that are available in fighting polio around the world. Today, I'll give you a little bit of a status update of where things stand in terms of cases and some of the challenges that remain. I think probably a good place for us to start is with the vaccines themselves, because they've been so instrumental in getting us to where we're at today, but also represent some new challenges. Since the 1950s, there's been really two vaccines that have been used. The injection vaccine, which is used in most countries, and have been used exclusively in the United States since 2000. This vaccine uses an inactive polio virus. So there's no risk of shedding, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. It's particularly effective in protecting an individual against polio. Now, the oral vaccine is less expensive, it's easier to administrate, and it's particularly effective in controlling community spread of the polio virus. It uses a weakened live polio virus. So on rare occasions, it can shed and infect others. So let's talk a little bit about this shedding. When a child takes an oral vaccine, ingests it and excretes it, the virus can end up in the wastewater. Other children can be exposed to it, to become infected. And usually that's a good thing, right? Because these children are being exposed to a weak live virus and they build up an immunity to the polio. But in areas where there's very low vaccination coverage, that virus can circulate for a long time, can mutate, and can actually strengthen to the point where it can paralyze its victim. And that's how we refer to it as vaccine-derived poliovirus. So with that background, let's talk about
the cases, where we stand today. And I'll start with the rural or the wild polio virus, which has really been our key focus since the 1950s. It circulates naturally within the environment. Originally, there were 3 strains. 2 have been eradicated. There's 1 strain that is still circulating and is primarily in Afghanistan and Pakistan, which we refer to as the endemic countries, countries that have not yet been declared polio-free. So this shows the number of cases in these 2 countries for the past 2 years. Now, as the society has been opening up after the pandemic, we've seen an increase in cases in these 2 countries. So far this year, 22 cases, 20 of those have been in Pakistan. So this remains a very key focus of our polio efforts, particularly in Pakistan, where there's been flooding and therefore a higher risk of transmission of the virus. Now, we often say that polio, or we're 1 plane ride away from reintroducing wild polio into other parts of the world that have been declared polio-free. And that is happening this year. Oh, looks like she quit working. That's happened this year already. We've had 7 cases in Mozambique. Now, the virus has been traced back to have originated in Pakistan. So because the virus is not indigenous to the African continent, the African region is still considered to be polio-free. But there's a big effort going on right now to control this outbreak in Mozambique. Shows the number of wild polio cases in recent years. When the global polio eradication initiative was launched in 1988, it was estimated that there was somewhere between 250,000 and 350,000 polio cases that ended up in paralyzing the victim. And you can see we've come a long way since that time. In 2019, we were at 176 cases, and as we already talked about this year, 29 cases, 22 of those in Afghanistan and Pakistan, and then the 7 in Mozambique. Now let's advance the slide. Well, let's now talk about vaccine-derived poliovirus. So this map can be a little bit hard to read in the back of the room. Can you see it okay? So this is the vaccine-derived poliovirus, and this map is a little bit maybe perhaps hard for you to see in the back of the room. Can you all see it okay? Green nods, yes, that's good. This is a map of Brazil. You can see it okay in the back there? No, of course, it's United States. Sorry, I blew up there. We did have a case of polio in the United States this year. It occurred in June, and it happened in New York City, where a young, unvaccinated adult was paralyzed. The virus was traced back that it was a vaccine-derived poliovirus that originated outside the United States. Probably of equal concern is that as we've been testing the wastewaters in New York City, we're finding that this virus is circulating more broadly. Now, fortunately, most people who are affected by polio don't have symptoms. And so far, we haven't had any new cases yet. But certainly this is a concern, and we're in the process now of vaccinating the unvaccinated in New York City to contain this particular virus. Shows the number of vaccine-derived polio cases going back to 2020. In 2020, there was over 1,000 cases in 26 different countries. Most of these were the undeveloped countries. This year so far, 444 cases in 18 countries. One of those, of course, is the United States. But there's been a nice downward trend here, and that's primarily because of greater use of the injection vaccine, which does not shed. And a year ago, they introduced a new more genetically stable oral vaccine that is less likely to mutate. So the hope is that we can really rapidly drive down these cases, but it still today remains a big challenge. So let's talk about what that challenge is. In 2020, the Global Polio Eradication Initiative launched or really introduced an updated strategy for the period of 2022 to 2026. The vision remained the same, a polio-free world. But there was two new goals that were set, one for the endemic countries of Pakistan and Afghanistan, and then another for the rest of the world, the non-endemic countries. But the goals are very similar. It's to eradicate all forms of polio, whether it's wild or vaccine-derived, by the end of 2023. So that means next year would be the last year of any polio cases being reported. Then the strategy is to go 3 years with no additional cases, and at the end of 2026, declare the world as being polio-free. So that's a big goal. When the strategy was launched in 2020, it was estimated it cost $5 billion to execute the strategy. And this is where Rotary comes into play. As one of the original partners of the Global Polio Eradication Initiative, this role is the advocate, which is a fundraising role. And it gets help from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which beginning in 2007, does a 2-for-1 match for every contribution that's made to the Rotary Polio Plus Fund. So a $50 gift becomes a $150 gift. Now, Rotary has committed to raising $50 million each year, and then with the match, that grows to $150 million a year. So let's take a look at how our club has supported this initiative. And we can advance the slide. You can see that our contributions peaked in 2018 at over 14,500. That's about the time our membership was peaking as well. In more recent years, we've been in that 6,500 to over $7,000. So this club has been an extremely strong supporter of this particular initiative. And just before the meeting, Jim Patton granted me a recognition that the Rotary Foundation has given to the Rotary Club of Ames. And it says, as being presented, a certificate of appreciation for his financial support to End Polio Now, Countdown to History campaign. Together, we will fulfill our promise to the children of the world and eradicate polio. This year, we advance the slide. This year, our goal has been set at $6,800. It continues to be one of the top priorities for our club. If you can help us again this year, there's a number of ways you can do it. Some of you participate in the program where a portion of your quarterly fees that you pay to Rotary goes to the Rotary Foundation. And if you're one of those, that portion in the fourth quarter will go to the Polio Plus Fund. If you're not in that program or you want to give more, there are polio boxes at each of the tables that you can put in cash or checks, and that'll be collected and sent in. If that doesn't work for you, particularly for those of you who are participating virtually, you can write a check to the Rotary Club of Ames, Post Office Box 327, and put on the check that it is for the Polio Plus Fund. Karen will collect those checks and send those into the foundation. And still, a fourth method is you can go to the Rotary Foundation website and make a direct contribution to the Polio Plus Fund. If you do that, we encourage you to put on the club number of 2229 and your individual ID number so the credit comes back to the club and to yourself. So in summary, this club has been a great supporter of this initiative, and there's been a great amount of progress that's been made in eradicating polio since the 1980s, but the job's not done. And if you can help us again this year, it'd certainly be appreciated. Thank you. I'm going to, if you have any questions, rather than take time now, I'll stick around at the end of the meeting and take those questions.
That stark reminder that the job is not yet completed, so we still have a lot of work to do. So thank you. My pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Robert Brown. Dr. Brown is an Anson Marston Distinguished Professor of Engineering and Gary and Donna Hoover Chair in Mechanical Engineering at Iowa State University. He holds the rank of professor in the departments of Mechanical Engineering, Chemical and Biological Engineering, and Agricultural and Biosystems Engineering. Dr. Brown is widely recognized as a thought leader in processing of biomass into energy, fuels, and chemicals. He's been recognized by Biofuels Digest as one of the top 100 people in bioenergy for 6 consecutive years. His activities have been cited hundreds of times in the press. Dr. Brown has published over 225 papers and book chapters. He wrote Biorenewable Resources, Engineering New Products from Agriculture, now in its 2nd edition, which is the most widely used textbook in biorenewables over the last decade. So he literally wrote the book. He edited Thermochemical Processing of Biomass, published in 2011, a book for professionals working in this field. Dr. Brown received his PhD in mechanical engineering from Michigan State University in 1980. He was a fellow of the American Society of Mechanical Engineering. He received the Diamond Class Award for Excellence in Thermochemical Conversion Science in 2015. He has 18 patents, one of which received Research and Development 100 Award from Research and Development Magazine in 1997. And is not busy conducting research in the labs of the Bioeconomy Institute on the campus of Iowa State University. Dr. Brown might be found working in another lab he has inside of his home. And this one is very close and near to my heart. It happens to be a brewery lab. So please welcome Dr. Robert Brown.
I thought you were going to talk all about brewing, but I appreciate that introduction. I will add to it, this year, the Food Science Department has given me a courtesy appointment. Now that has credentialed me to teach about beverages in that department. I'm going to talk a little bit about that program. So to start, I like to do just a real quick survey. How many are beer drinkers? Raise your hand. Okay, I have to be careful. I was invited to speak to a Big 12 meeting of administrators that came to the Brew Lab on campus. And it turned out there were several representatives from the Brigham Young University. So I ended up spending a lot of time focusing, as I do in my course, on health and safety in brewing and consuming beer. So I just checked that out. So, and I'm going by professor in charge instead of my preferred title of head brewer. HR hasn't figured that designation out on campus yet. So let's see, I think I can control it, please. See what happens. There we go. We've officially referred to it as a brewing science program at Iowa State University. This is our new webpage. I encourage you to go there. You'll notice that it is under what's called the Center for Crops Utilization Research. And use a crop. Who can tell me what crop we're using? All right, well, that's one. What else? Barley. So we can use wheat and corn and a number of what we call adjuncts. So it fits very well under the Center for Crops Utilization Research. We started with an aspiration of potentially offering workshops. But when I was approached by the director and co-director, associate director of SECR, as we call it, about helping develop a brewing program, I said, yes, but I don't actually teach a course in it. And that has turned out to be the first thing we offer. It's a course called Food Science, Human Nutrition / memory as a mechanical engineering, 273X. So a lot of questions just in the name of that. The science and practice of brewing. So what's with the X? It's an experimental course.
That's listed 2. That's a 200 level. It's considered a sophomore level course. Can you tell me what the problem with that is? Sophomores can't drink beer. But the only way I could get this course going was to offer it as a 200 level course, offering to juniors and seniors who have reached 21 years of age. They actually have to post their IDs on the course webpage so that I can assure that. And I'm working to make it a 300 level course, which I just finished recently. And that will allow me next fall to teach us a 300 level course. And I've been telling all these details because the biggest roadblock in offering the brewing program is, the rules and regulations, which are around alcohol. There are a lot of them. And so we're taking these one step at a time. But all of the 200 level course was students would register for it, and their advisors would say, this does not count as a technical elective. You're a junior, senior. So they had to go petition the departments to let them take it for technical elective. And I've given them the syllabus. And they need a lot of science, actually. You have to have some science background as a prerequisite for entering this course, because I wanted students to understand this is not about drinking beer. It's partly about making beer, but it's also an understanding all the chemistry and physics and food science and microbiology that goes into producing this product. Well, with that, let's see. We've also had aspirations for doing research, doing outreach in this program. And I'm going to talk about these in these slides that follow. This time I pointed this way. There we go. Okay, so this was the article Mace was talking about. I was approached about my home brewing. This is my basement on the left. On the right is my screened-in porch. I have 2 breweries at home, okay, depending on the weather. The basement is for the winter. I actually started out in the kitchen. I was driven out of there pretty quick. Because, spare wood is a sticky mess. On the left, you'll see it's a fairly modest system, and I like to put this picture to show you how far we've come in just a couple of years of activity. So I would produce beer, I bottle it, I've got a home label on it. I actually fooled some people once. They thought it was actually a professional brewery when they were drinking beer out of these bottles. And then on the porch, the equipment that I used there. So this was the basis of an article written. It was distributed to alums at Iowa State University. It appeared in both the News Tribune and the Des Moines Register, and some really interesting things resulted. I'm going to give you a history. This was my pandemic project, actually. So back in April 2020, I had a conversation with the associate director of the Center for Crop Stabilization Research. Let's do this. We agreed. It was April. Remember what happened in April? We were shut down. We went, online for classes. Conferences were canceled, and nothing happened for some time. Then in October, we were still in the pandemic. But one of my graduate students, Jessica Brown, no relation, I talked to a reporter on campus that said, you need to do this article on Professor Brown. It happened. I got a lot of inquiries. It was fun to doing some. Could I have a tour of your home brewing? Well, the pandemic, we were going to wait till afterwards. But the really interesting one was January 2021. We got a message from John Blickman. He's an alum of Iowa State University. And I was an assistant professor of mechanical engineering. He was an undergraduate in mechanical engineering. He went on to a distinguished career in an engines company in this area. He was a home brewer, but unlike many home brewers who go out and start a brew pub, he started an engineering business out of his garage, building quality equipment for brewing. I realized I about fell on my chair when I saw John Blickman writing and said, how could I help? You actually donated 40% of the equipment that's in the laboratory. You can see some pictures of this. So that was a really big deal. And John now comes every semester, speaks to the students in class. And that's been a real fun experience for us. So by September of last year, the equipment came in. The pandemic still is a fact. We made this donation early, but it took forever to get it in place. And it came in September. The next month, we were brewing beer. And the next 2 weeks, we were throwing it out. Okay. It takes a little practice to get at home. I really perfected it. Our equipment, this new equipment, we had a lot of learning to do. And part of it had to do with the lab that we were working on. I'll talk a little bit about that as we go on. Okay. Okay, does this help? Okay. I'll just take it off. I prefer to do that. On string. Okay. All right, but I can do this better anyway. So we brewed the first beer in October, and then November we got approval from the university to offer this course in the spring. So it was moving very, very quickly for these things to happen. And I didn't answer why does it happen in November? Well, the rules of the university are if the courses to be taught. It's a decision of the department chair whether it's going to be taught. Mechanical engineering, so it made sense that it was listed as a need. In fact, most of the students in these first 2 semesters have been out of mechanical engineering. So we offered the course in January. In March, she received a native brewing license from the state of Iowa. I was in a presentation in the Beer Lab, and I saw the logo signal back to him, sounded better in his presence. Anybody have any idea why we are at Beer? Why we decided that was important? Turned out I was going to be a bootlegger. You know, that was a real concern. You know the definition of bootlegger. You give me money, I give you beer. I don't have a license. So why would I do that? But the students are paying tuition. Class. And I said, they're not paying tuition to drink beer, they're paying tuition listening to lecture. But anyway, we have a native license, and that means we could actually sell the beer as well. Right now, the university is saying you can give it away, but we've got to think about this before you sell the beer. There's all obvious good reasons for that. We are now offering the course this semester. I meet with students tomorrow. They're getting ready to brew a lager. Does anybody know the difference between a lager and an ale? Anybody? Register for that course. That's the and I like to think of doing this an engineering process. In fact, there's another saying that farmers make wine and engineers brew beer. So we are making it an engineering process. In chemical engineering, they talk about unit operations. So each one of those boxes represents what we call a unit operation. And it does things like rolling the grains, mashing the grains, a process called lathering, brewing, clearing, fermentation, conditioning, filtration, packaging. And we do all of those in the class. Some of those get into one vessel. We do all of those in the class. So I just want to point that out. Let's go to the next slide. Here's our brewing laboratory. These are actually pictures from last fall, and we made a lot of changes in there. We've moved out some equipment that we were sharing the laboratory with. This laboratory, as of last year, was actually a plastics recycling laboratory. So I think this is a better use for the lab, but it did have one impact. I mentioned the first beer we brewed, it would actually turned out to be sour. There's a, that's in everybody's trash, it's called lactobacillus. And I'm just sure when we opened up their family and start painting this work, that those active access just came right down in their beer. Side. Now, the reality is a lot of people like products from active access. Anybody? Yes. So there's actually a number of products. But if you're trying to produce an IPA, you probably don't want a sour IPA. Although I'm going to try one sometime. So we could do something like that. Okay, so there's a laboratory. Here's a list of equipment. We have 10-gallon systems. I got them out big because I thought the students would do beer, taste it, and then they could take a 6-pack home. And the chief of police at Iowa State says, I just can't imagine students walking out of classrooms with a 6-pack. That at least the students consume beer in the classroom under supervision. They may drink as much as a pound of beer in the course of the class. So that's worked out well. But when we started, we were only allowed to serve the students 2 ounces. That kept things under control. Okay. 4 10-gallon gravity systems, 4 10-gallon pilot brewing systems. The first one is that you do at home. The second one is like a small commercial brewer would do it. So we get to see both experiences. We've got conical fermenters. I don't think you can see them clearly in these pictures here, but they're like when you go visit a brewer and you've got those big tanks that they come at the bottom and they find them. So I have we have a 2-barrel brew house. And by telling me how many gallons of beer you could brew in that? It's 31 times 2, 62 gallons of beer could be brewed in that. And this was John Britton convinced us to do it. He says, if you want to really get an experience of what brewing is, you need these bigger systems. They're sitting, see if I can show, they're sitting right up there at the top of the lab. Introducing retail quantities of beer. Now it's still tiny, but potentially that could be done. Light tanks to carbonate the beer, workstations and cleaning stations. So it's quite an elaborate laboratory. And it searches directly to what we call a technology transfer theater, which is a classroom with a whole 40 people in it. Okay, so here are the course objectives. I already told you. Students gain appreciation of health, safety, and environmental sustainability, alcohol production, and consumption in the course. We have them take so many safety classes. They actually have to get a server's certificate before they can walk into the laboratory, as well as a number of safety courses. Students understand the impact of all hops, water, and used in beer production. The Germans said those really were the only 4 things you could put in beer, but there's a tremendous variety just in those. Produce hundreds of different kinds of styles of beer. Students are introduced to the unit operations. I showed you those in an earlier slide. And those demonstrate competence in the production of both ale and lager beer styles, both in terms of efficiency of operations and quality of product. Now, here they are. The student looks pretty happy. He's rating on 13-gallon fermenter with only about 6 gallons of wood. He's pouring on a vial of yeast that will convert it to beer. Down here, this is an example of a team of 5 students, one's missing in the picture, judging beers that were produced in the laboratory. I have to say that that 2 ounces of beer took them an hour to consume, because they were busy evaluating its characteristics. Now we've gone up to 4-ounce pours from the 2 ounces now. But as a team sport, so I tend to have 5 students on each team. Actually, one person can do 5 gallons of beer without any difficulty. But it's kind of fun for them to work as a team, and I assign different roles. I head brewer, masher, But that's what they call converting the starch into sugar out of the grains. Hopper, where we use a lot of hops, that has been done very carefully. Fermentation mead and sanitation mead, which is the most important way to get a drinkable beer. Sanitation. It's not necessarily the best beer, but you have to have the sanitation or it will not be drinkable beer. You really want to taste it, or just the aroma itself would be enough. Okay, and then you can see students moving beer out of the barrel kettle through a heat exchanger directly into the fermenter. We do sensory analysis in the course. This is here that with that on the wine drinkers could be wine snobs. They are beer snobs too, and they are proud of the fact that they evaluate appearance, aroma, flavor, mouthfeel when consuming beer. This is an official judging form that the students learn to fill out and evaluate the beer for these 5 characteristics. Now, the reaction of this young that is Jessica Brown. She actually worked with a team of 3 of us doing the beer for the American Institute of Chemical Engineers. They had a beer competition at their own meeting. She made a jalapeno sour beer. She's either reacting to the sourness of the jalapenos, I don't remember in this case. She actually did 8 different variations, and that probably was not the one she would have very ICHE with. But she did get what they called a People's Choice Award for this jalapeno sour beer, if you can imagine. And she didn't win grand prize because she mislabeled it. She's called it a sour beer instead of a fruit beer. Just jalapeno was a fruit, but anyway, that's what she filled out in the judging. Okay. There's a group of students trying to put together a brewing club. They run into some of the same issues that we have. How do you control the alcohol? Not turn this into a big problem. And so they're still working on that. But they will see again, Jessica Vince Banno was an undergraduate in microbiology. And I think she's been inspired to study microbiology in graduate school. His experiences here. We have a research ambition. We want to identify faculty for interdisciplinary research. We put together a proposal internally to do this. They look at process engineering, sensory analysis, analytical chemistry, and statistical analysis as part of the research program. They've been looking at things like sustainability and brewing. Beer brewing is actually not very sustainable, just to let you know that, but there's big areas for improvement. So we're looking at new kinds of yeast, product stability, gluten-free beer, and non-alcoholic beer. And evaluations of some of the beers that have been produced. I mentioned we would like to support the Iowa brewing industry. The definition of a small craft brewery is 15,000 barrels or less a year. The average brewery in Iowa, and there are 109 breweries. The average size is only 15,000. So it's 1/10 the scale of what you'd call the limit on a small brewery. So they tend to be small. They are understaffed in terms of evaluating new things. We hope we can help them with that. And we've got a workshop planned for this January on harvesting of yeast for the industry. And we're working with Washington County Extension to develop home brewing workshops. Okay. And then we mentioned the retail brewery. These are the 2 barrel systems. There's an alcohol beverage division license. All right. So I tried to convince us to have this in the Beer Lab, this meeting. He thought it was a bad idea. I guess. But these are 3 beers that we've got on tap right now. We give it away. We don't charge for it, which we currently want. And there's something called a cold IPA. I call it none of the bag as a choice because it could be a number of different things. That's one of the choices in some of the students' exams. Alt beer, I don't like the alt means old beer. I'm not real keen on that one, so I called it bitter ale. And then that smoked margin, we actually used a smoked malt, just like a line bourbon on the side called this Smoky the Beer. And the favorites that I heard people love that smoky character. In fact, the cigar and bourbon drinkers, they said, I want to drink one of these before I start with the cigars and the bourbon. On Twitter, I do that to try to build up a campaign to find the students that are 21 and need to understand how they could do a technical elective. So there's a lot of people that I would normally acknowledge. I'm just going to leave that there to be aware. It took a lot of people helping me to get this far in the program, including this management, including the chair of food science, and a number of other people that have been involved. So thank you for your time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I can't think what it's called, but after you've used the grains, but there's distillers grains, is that what they
we call them spent grains, but it is essentially distillers.
That's part of why it's not an efficient process, because you have those left over or whatever. But what are you doing with those grains?
Feeding them to the chickens. So one of my colleagues, he's actually Belgian, so he's been real helping developing Belgian brewers in the laboratory. He also has chickens. Those at home, I compost. I don't want chickens. I don't think I'd be allowed chickens in my backyard. So we compost, and it makes beautiful soil for the garden. Thank you for that question.
I'm interested in where hops is being grown here in the Midwest. Are there any Iowa producers? I never been over in southeast Nebraska, but
they are grown. It's in my backyard. But there is one commercial company, it's South Georgia, I can't think of it. There's one Boston company, but those both barley and hops, they're much better in the state of Washington. So we get most of them from the state of Washington.
I am not a beer drinker. I didn't raise my hand. So we may all know the answer to this question, but what's the difference between a lager and an ale?
I'm so glad you asked. So the scientific answer is the ale yeast are known as top fermenters, and the lager yeast are known as bottom fermenters. And the lager yeast is a cold yeast. They're actually fermenting about 52, 54 degrees Fahrenheit. The ale yeast are more like 68, 70 degrees Fahrenheit. And we make a different character beer. And red beer tends to have some fruity esters associated with it. Where a lot of the lagers, they don't want any of that. Okay, it's basically, the lager is the most popular brand in the United States, our style. It's called Bud Light, for example. So it's got a real clean flavor to it. But the craft beer is called is the yellow stuff. So, yes, sir.
Yeah, so a few times you've mentioned that you can give it away. Just wondering how one gets on the receiving end of that gift.
So that's a real good one. Our question. So, university, honor of the service, the faculty and staff during the pandemic, had an appreciation week. I had groups coming through the laboratory. I'll call it something, by the way, and it's usually we use 4-ounce pours. People come in and have a drink, we let them do it. And so we have different groups that come through.
Shared a slide earlier that had the German definition of beer being like the 4 ingredients. Now I've heard that some of his beloved brands don't, but they have other things in them.
Absolutely. So it was called the purity law in Germany. They have their own 3 ingredients. Water. So yeast added after the invention of the microscope, seriously. So Budweiser is beer. It's actually, they have great quality control. It's just not a very interesting beer, is what I'm going to say. That's my personal opinion, by the way. So yes, there's what they call adjuncts. That beer that had the jalapenos in it, that was not, that beer was awesome. But the fruit was typical, coriander, stuff. So you can do that, and it's not considered a bad thing. It's just some people that tend to be a little bit more purist. And so let's just stick to the basics.
Are we restricted on, well, I would assume enrollment?
Absolutely. So I'm always thinking about how I can improve the opportunity for students to take this course. We think our lab is big enough to easily handle 20 students. So we capped the enrollment at 20. That means 5 students per station. We actually have 8 stations, but they're a little different equipment. So we rotate that equipment for that same group. We're offering 2 sections next spring. So we'll be able to have now 40 students. So 80 students a year. How many students are at Iowa State? Right? So we're only going to touch a fraction of those students.
Do you see a certificate brewing program in the future?
I've got a lot of ambitions for it, and I'm taking it one step at a time. So what we are doing in the certificate program, some of you know Stuart Berger, who offers a beverage course on campus, very popular. He has come to me and said, could we use your course as the capstone in a beverage minor that he's doing? But to do that, we had to promote from 200 to 300 level course. So we got that approval, and we hope that will be part of that minor program. But we're not putting together a beer's minor at this point. One step at a time kind of thing.
You can bottle or can the beer, and was that part of your choices? So the differences between those?
Yeah, so that's really, we call that packaging. And bottling is actually the easiest. Every time beer bottles, it's low cost to do that. You invest a little bit of capital and start kegging another one a bottle again. But that means you need to set up a kegerator and the faucets. But what I love about it is I can pull off 10 ounces instead of drinking 12 ounces or 16 ounces. Canning is actually a very expensive proposition, and we don't do that. There's something they're using now. You go to a brew pub and they'll get a big can, and they'll can like that. I can't remember what they call that. That's an investment of like $600 or something. What's it called? Well, there's a growler where you fill a big bottle, but now they're actually canning. There's a name for that, and I cannot recall what it is.
80s, there was a guy in Denver, Colorado named John Hickenlooper who started up the Wine Coop Brewery. He's now the junior senator from Colorado. I wonder if you ever explore the different careers that people who start in brewing end up in.
It's phenomenal. They come from every walk of life. You know, some of the best are artists. So maybe that's a little bit of prejudice. I've got a son who's an artist now. He's an artist and baker. That creativity really pays off. I see that in the brewing too.
We've got something going here with beer, but I see a void at Iowa State in whiskeys and gins and stuff like that. Is there any engineering aspect of that that's going to be opening up soon?
We have a faculty member in biosystems engineering that he walked around and says, where's your distillery? In principle, you can do it. You're still doing this basic mashing process to get alcohol diluted, and then you have to distill it. So we've talked about it. There's a fairly large capital investment in doing something like that. But I understand down in would that be Kentucky? They're actually investing in one universities there to put in as a part of a curriculum there. We're not there. Steps. Thank you.
That's a good question. Have you had any students that have now used this knowledge and had a passion for it and now gone into work for a brewery in Iowa or across the United States?
So that would be really cool if that took place. Now, last spring, all these students had their jobs. They came in the class, they had their jobs. John Britton contacted me this late summer and said, I need an engineer. I said, come to the lecture or class and we have lots to choose from. So that's one reason we convinced him to come this fall to do it. And I think the students now are picking up their the ratio of male to female students. It has been mostly male. There's a reason for that because they've been mostly mechanical engineers. Now we're doing better in mechanical engineering, but that's part of it. I have Jessica is one, and we have one from science this semester. So it's overwhelmingly male, and it's overwhelmingly engineers so far. I think we can change that. We just got to start doing more side years, is what I've discovered. Most of them don't like IPAs, astonished, but they like side years. So we'll diversify our selection, diversify our enrollment, I think. Very dry, but thank you. Here I see a brewing open with your expertise in Suntown. And I think Mr. Pollard is the one to visit with that now in regards to that. So I think that's just going to be pretty cool to do that. So, and the other one I had, spending hours of operation for those that might want to swing by and just see you in action. I apply that. So we're going to be the most popular class in United States history, I suspect. One other note before we adjourn, and first I do have a quote to share. Somebody said, sure it was a woman who invented, he was a wise man who invented beer. That was Plato, but a woman who actually did that. And the one I really read is our old favorite Bill Carter, President Carter's brother. There's no such thing as a bad beer. It's that some taste better than others. So, it's a really great time. And one of the note as we conclude with Polar Day, World Day, Imagine a World. So that's what we'll leave on. If you please stand and we'll do the following test. Of the things we think, say, and do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Goodwill and better friendships will be beneficial to all concerned.